significant about Magic, they are still training for me. There's still standings.
What's up, you beautiful human beings? Welcome back to coverage of Mythic Championship number 3. There's a look at the trophy and the spot where our finals will take place later today. Hi, everybody. I'm Maria Bertholdi. That's day 9. That's Cedric Phillips. And, well, Brad Nelson, all he does is take down Kai.
Woo! And what a beautiful command the Dreadhorde to finish things off.
That was awesome.
Such huge swings in that matchup.
Can we talk about very quickly how Brad went undefeated in the MPL Weekly in his split and has not lost a match here?
Correct.
What?
Yeah.
What, are we serious? He just hasn't
know
lost?
how to lose anymore, right?
Apparently in Standard, and in the MPL, he was playing a lot of different decks. This one obviously playing Esper Hero. Guy just doesn't lose in the format. It's completely outrageous.
Yeah, and I mean, that's an important thing to bring up. It's not just that he has a good deck that he's piloting very well. Large variety throughout all of the MPL, and then just, playing Esper Hero beautifully.
Yeah, it's truly incredible. I don't think we realize it in the moment what we were watching. He's playing against the best players in the world in the MPL and in this tournament, and he has not lost a match yet.
All right, well, we've got some exciting stuff for you here. Magic Core Set 2020 is coming up sooner than you might realize, and we're going to take a look at a preview card. We've already seen this card before, but we're going to get Cedric's take on it here. And in case you missed it the other day, Vivien, Arc Bow Ranger. Hello, beautiful.
I am super into this card. Whenever you're taking a look at Planeswalkers, there's a lot of places you can start. For example, you can start with the Loyalty, starting on 4 and going up to 5 or down to 1. We'll get to the abilities in a second, but the second place I have to look is the casting cost. We're looking at 1 green, 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 which means that this is probably going to go in. It doesn't have to be a mono green deck, but it's going to be a base green deck, right? That's exactly what's going on with this card. Now, Sean, we take a look at the +1. Distribute 2 +1/+1 counters among up to 2 target creatures, then gain trample until end of turn. How many times have we seen big green creatures not be able to get through and get chumped out by little soldier tokens?
Yeah, I mean, Nullhide Ferox, I feel like, is the prime example of a card that you just always feel like you've won when you slam it down.
Yep.
And then a Hero Precinct 1 generates a token, and it generates a token, it generates a token. Nullhide Ferox can never get through. There's a lot of creatures in green that don't have trample, but have those huge stats. And this is the perfect way to just finish over the top due to that trample effect.
So I love that +1, helping creatures that are absolutely enormous. Green's forte, helping them get through and deal a ton of damage. The -3, which is going to bring Vivien's Loyalty down from 4 until 1. If you do that the first turn you play it, target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature or Planeswalker. That's a really big deal because normally you'd see fight a creature. Green loves to battle with other creatures, and their creatures are larger, so they'll win. But if this tournament has been any indication, killing Planeswalkers is going to be pretty darn important, something that Green's kind of lacking, except for through the attack step, so that's going to be a pretty big deal.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in the exact same way that the trample helps solve a problem, the destroy another creature with the fight effect.
Yep.
Do you feel like maybe it might be putting a little too many similar eggs in the basket for the green player?
No, I don't think so. I think green needs a Planeswalker like this to be able to reestablish its dominance. Right now, we're seeing so much Esper and Mono Red, and our green decks are actually kind of based around Wilderness Reclamation and, of course, Nexus of Fate. So maybe seeing a green aggressive deck now with the assist of Vivien Arc Bow Ranger is going to be really nice. But the ultimate here, we'll put ultimate in quotes because it's not that hard to get to in -5. You may choose a creature card you own from outside the game revealed and put it into your hand. That means that building sideboards is going to be a lot of fun now. We saw that with Mastermind's Acquisition a little bit at the Mythic Invitational earlier this year. We see it in other older formats in Magic, but for Standard, we don't see this effect a ton, and that means you can get really creative with your deck building.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, even the new Karn that lets you find an artifact that you own from outside the game leads to some really fascinating constructions. And, mono green or just heavy green-based decks have never really felt like they had a ton of flexibility. It was turn 1 Llanowar Elf, nice, 1-0.
Yeah.
Or, oops, didn't get turn 1 Llanowar Elf. Well, maybe next time, You dump your whole hand out. There's large payoffs like Galta, but it can be tricky to try to get the longevity or feel like you have the flexibility there. And I think Vivien Arc Bow Ranger's ultimate, in air quotes as you put it, it's like the perfect type of flexibility that still feels very green.
This is the kind of flexibility that you are looking for in a Planeswalker, and because you are playing green, that means you're going to be able to play it ahead of schedule most times. So you can expect to cast this thing on turn 3 a lot of the time with Llanowar Elves and all the other mana accelerants that green has available. And hey, who knows what's going to be in the sideboard? That's where you get to have a lot of fun about what cards you put in there. If you want to go a little mid-range, you can go to Biogenic Ooze. If you want to go super big, like you mentioned, you can go to Galta. I think you're always going to want some sort of naturalize effect, something that can kill an enchantment or an artifact. So I like the flexibility of this card, but that minus ability I think is the best of the bunch. Being able to control both creatures and planeswalkers, it's going to be a pretty big deal, Maria.
And you know what else? Best of one. Like, I mean, obviously you love the wish effect even in your best of 3 decks, but it gives it that much more punch in a best of 1 matchup as well.
And there's a lot more opportunities to do interesting things with base green decks. I mean, we've seen like Hydroid Krasis, these decks that are essentially green, and they have all the blue-green dual lands, just to have the Hydroid Krasis for flexibility. I feel like Vivien is another one of these planeswalkers that opens up some more doors for green, splash, and other color.
Yeah, this is pretty exciting stuff. Again, the flexibility in deck building I think is a really big deal here, and just a lot of the different things that you can do with this particular card. On a base level, it looks pretty powerful, but once you actually start to play the games with it and see how it interacts on the curves and the loyalty going down from 4 to 1 or up to 5 right away, we're going to learn more about it, but I expect it to be pretty good.
I mean, that is an important thing to bring up, that at first glance, there's so many possibilities, so many opportunities, but it reminds me a little bit of a Johnny Adversary of Tyrants, who does have that plus ability being to put 2 +1/+1 counters among 2
Anything
creatures.
that puts counters on stuff, I'm in.
Oh, yeah. But the number of times I've had to just play a Johnny with nothing on board and just be like, well, I guess we're marching towards the ultimate now. You know, I can completely see this Planeswalker kind of having a similar struggle. Certainly has a ton of power in it, but, you know, that's what always happens when you see a card. You're like, I will win all tournaments with this. And you play with it, and you're like, it actually has a new problem I need to solve.
Yeah, I'm super into that card. I'm excited for Core Set 2022 release. There's a lot of awesome cards that Wizards of the Coast has previewed already. It's a very, very exciting set. So many Magic cards have come out recently with War of the Spark, Modern Horizons, and now Core Set 2020.
They're killing it with Core Set 2020.
They really, really are. It looks like a really, really cool set.
All right, well, let's get back into our gameplay here at Mythic Championship 3 and take a look at our brackets and find out where we're going yet this morning. What we've already seen, Shahar Shenhar versus Matias Leveratto. Huge upset there, Matias taking that match. Brad Nelson versus Kai Buddha. Brad Nelson, we just saw him beat Kai Buddha, so that knocks Shahar Shenhar and Kai Buddha down to our lower bracket. But we are going to focus on our upper bracket finals here, Matias Leveratto versus Brad Nelson. Take a look at them there on your screen. 2 Mythic Championships for Matias, 39 for Brad. And that's kind of been the story of the weekend for Matias. Underdog, but guess what? He keeps on winning, but Brad refuses to lose.
I mean, this is the match that I've been most excited for potentially happening today, and now it's going to happen in the upper finals. I cannot stress enough how cleanly Matias Leveratto plays the Simic Nexus deck. There was even a turn that Cedric and I were talking about in the Shahar Shenhar match where a single Blast Zone card was up to prevent lethal, but Matias cleverly didn't spend the Blast Zone and tried to stay alive, was able to get extra card draws. I mean, there is so much skill necessary to perform this deck well.
Well, Simic Nexus is a very, very powerful deck. It wasn't a heavily played deck here this weekend, but the players that did play it felt very confident about it, and Matias is really kind of spearheading that movement for those players, making them feel like it was actually the correct decision, even though their results did not line up. It's been a very powerful deck all week, and we've seen the combination, of course, of Wilderness Reclamation and Nexus of Fate. Those are the key cards. But actually, to me, some of the key cards that have stood out here are some of the one-ofs that have been floating around that have been keeping him alive. Blink of an Eye, Callous Dismissal, some sideboard cards, Nissa who shakes the world to finish off the game. It's really great deck building from top to bottom. This is the kind of deck that, yeah, it's easy to put a couple of 4-ofs in Wilderness Reclamation, Rose Spiral, Root Snare, Nexus. That stuff's easy, but it's those couple of flex spots, and if you get them wrong, it could cost you the entire tournament. It looks like to me, Day 9, he's gotten them right.
Yeah, I mean, 3 Chemister's Insight is kind of a weird number. 3 Tamiyo's, kind of a weird number. People love these cards. They always feel good to play, but Matias brilliantly navigated the situation against Shahar Shenhar. This is game 1. You see at 3 health, barely staying alive before getting the infinite combo off.
Well, once the engine gets online, as we have saw over the course of this weekend watching him play his matches, it is basically impossible to stop. Of course, in this particular game, Shahar was unable to actually get all 20 points of damage across, then 2 Wilderness Reclamations, a Narset, a Tamiyo, a ton of Nexus of Fates, and all of a sudden, this game is out of Shahar's hands, and Shahar, all he can do, as you can see in the bottom left hand of the screen, is sit there and watch as Matias ends up taking the game.
And I mean, especially the flipped search for his Kanta, the trio of Planeswalkers. And on game 2, this is the one where you get real frightened. Uh-oh. Mono red going first, double Legion War Boss opening. I mean, this game almost felt over before it got off the ground. But it's these little moves like this, like that Paradise Druid block you just saw. Very very good timing of when to sacrifice some of those ramp creatures, which can feel so important to keep alive. Well, Matias is just brilliant at navigating when to block with them, when to conserve them for ramping.
Unfortunately, not much that Matias could do in that second game. And in this third one, fortunately for Matias, if you're rooting for him and Simic Nexus, Shahar taking an untimely mulligan to 5. Look, even in your bad matchups, sometimes you do have to get a little bit lucky. I think Matias knows that. We talked to him already multiple times this weekend. He knew that Mono Red was his worst matchup coming in. He was trying to dodge it. He didn't dodge it here in the top 4. But guess what? Things were going his way. An untimely mulligan to 5. And as you'll see here, he ends up taking the game off the back of 3 copies of Wilderness Reclamation.
And we're going to be talking again about the struggle that Matias Leveratto is going to have going up against Esper Hero. There is a copy of Mortify. Used to be one of the most popular cards to run in Esper, and we've seen that really dwindle down, but Brad Nelson's running a copy of that. D-Sparks, obviously a very nice tool to deal with the Wilderness Reclamations. It's kind of a different problem that Matias Leveratto has to solve. How do you keep your Wilderness Reclamations alive for the combo?
Well, this goes into Brad's deck building. Brad is so accomplished in the standard format, as we know. He has not lost a match in the MPL Weekly. He won his split, won 7 matches there. He won 3 matches yesterday. He's won 1 match today. We call that a winning streak in the business for the 2010 Player of the Year, who started playing in 2004. So many arena games underneath his belt. And you mentioned that Mortify, Sean. I do want to harp on that point. We talked about Matias's one-ofs, the Blink of the Eye, the Callous Dismissal, and all the other unique spots there. We saw Kai with an Ugin. We saw Brad with a Mortify. When Brad spoke with Becca, he said, I kind of like cheaper, more flexible cards when I'm playing in Standard. That's almost certainly going to come up in this matchup where Ugin might be too slow. Mortify is the perfect casting cost.
There is a danger here. Brad Nelson's list, again, centered around building up early board presence with Hero of Precinct 1, the 3-mana Planeswalkers. There's 3 copies of Tyrant Scorn that literally don't do anything. There's no good value of the Tyrant Scorn. However, Narset Parser of Veils and Teferi Time Raveler, these are the essential cards that will prevent Matias Leveratto from drawing and doing anything eventful with the Wilderness Reclamation.
Let's get into the highlights here and find out how he secured his spot in this matchup versus Kai Budde.
Gosh, I was completely enwrapped in this matchup in the back. I mean, these were long, grindy games where each player had 30, 40 health in each game, all the incidental life gain, the constant bouncing and replaying. I mean, this is like such a technical matchup to try to gain an edge in.
Well, the fun thing I like to look at in this matchup, too, is if you take a look on the right-hand side of the screen, it's the Planeswalker count, right? 4 right now, and Brad in this game, he's only got 1. For Matias, he has 3, and then Kai's got advantages in Kai's got advantages in other places as well. So you see Kai starting to take over, and he's able to secure the first game against Brad, I believe, if memory serves, and Kai shaking his head because he's so critical of himself, but him and Brad are good friends. They work together for this tournament, and if you're Kai, you're up a game and you get to go to the sideboard, you gotta think, all right, I just got to get 1 more of these games. I should probably be able to do that. But this is Brad Nelson we're talking about.
This was the turn that Brad Nelson performed so well. Getting all those Planeswalkers out feels very powerful. You feel good, but keep in mind, these Planeswalkers are very slow, gradual advantage builders. You have to very carefully navigate which one is going to plus to some of the 2/2. Should Hero of Dominaria draw a card and then leverage the other Teferi's instant speed for sorcery spells, or no, let's tuck, you know, that sort of navigation Brad, I think, did very well in the previous game. And here, sort of the opposite story. Not as many Planeswalkers for Brad in the final game, but having to, again, choose when to go attack the Planeswalkers, when to start suiciding in units, offering up trades just to try to punch in for extra points of damage.
In this matchup, as we saw, it has a lot to do with the Planeswalkers, it has a lot to do with Hero of Precinct 1, and it certainly has a lot to do with Command the Dreadhorde, which has been such a good card for both of these players and is a big reason that they are where they are in this tournament. But at the end of the day, Brad Nelson able to attack his good buddy, Kai Budde, for lethal. He beat the German Juggernaut twice in elimination rounds. It's hard enough doing it once. Not many people have done that. He's done it twice.
And so skillfully, too. I mean, it's really easy if you're if you're someone like me that likes my big green stompy decks, sometimes you just get some huge creatures out. They're very not subtle. You just swing in, win very quickly. Hero Precinct 1 is on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. Yes, technically, it can generate all this value, but it's very hard to find out when the good attack timings are, because you just have a bunch of 1/1s and a 2/2 that you kind of want to attack with, but you want to be careful to keep alive. I'm so impressed with Brad's judgment throughout these games.
And you know what? We've got two great stories here. Of course, Matias Leveratto, a true challenger at this tournament and using Arena really to make a name for himself in the game of Magic. Brad Nelson trying to answer the question, hey, buddy, what have you won? All right, so let's pick some picks. Who are you going to take?
I'm going to go with Brad Nelson.
Weird.
Yeah, no, listen. I go for Brad Nelson. Now, the thing is, I have personally tried to play Esper Hero, and it's so easy to throw the game away. But more importantly, it's so easy to lose and not really know why. Because everything happens very slowly, very gradually over the course of the game. And I think that Brad is showcasing such extraordinary skill with this deck. And this is the exact sort of matchup where those sorts of subtle decision-making is essential to win.
Great point. He knows it inside and out. How about you, Cedric? Who do you like?
These two players have played against each other already in this tournament. Brad did take care of Matias the first time they played. I expect him to do so again. I think this matchup is very, very difficult here for Matias. Brad has a lot of great elements. Only a couple dead cards in game number one. He's able to sideboard those out for games 2 and potentially game 3. I think he's very advantaged here, and I know he likes the matchup quite a bit. So I think it's just another win for old Brad.
Well, that means it is time to get into the winners' finals. Yesterday, these two players faced, and Brad Nelson came out on top. What'll be the result this time? Let's find out with Becca.
Yes, that's right. Thank you, Day 9. I'm so excited to welcome these players to the stage. First up, the one who grinded his way here through the Arena qualifier weekend, or, coming to the stage, the newcomer from Argentina, it's Matias Leveratto. We have the master of constructed, who is undefeated in the MPL Weekly, undefeated here. Welcome to the stage, Brad Nelson. And now let's head over to Marshall and Paul in the booth.
Thank you, Becca. Two great competitors sit down to battle it out here in our second round of this upper bracket. Both of them picking up the victory in their first round. One of them, improbably so, Leveratto really stole one there from Shahar Shenhar. He felt like it was his worst matchup. Shahar felt like it was his best matchup, yet Leveratto's the one that escaped. But now, boy, he has his hands full once again. Brad Nelson. You know, I heard Cedric say it over at the desk. He has not lost in this entire, well, certainly in this tournament, but also leading up to it. He played in the MPL weekly events, Paul, and he did not lose a single match, which earned him that day 2 seat here.
Yeah, and unlike some other players, he mixed it up a lot. He played different decks nearly every single week and just continued to just crush the competition. And, you know, he's kind of known for that. He is kind of the standard mastermind. And this matchup is actually very, very interesting because, you know, kind of one of the primary things that Brad really needs to establish here is an early clock. Because if you kind of get to the late game, things are going to get a little bit tough. So he really wants to get Hero Precinct 1 on turn 2, and it looks like, oh man, he's going down to 5 here.
Yeah, he is. And what happened there was he went to 6, and he saw a D-Spark and 2 cards that he doesn't want for this matchup, and he said, I just can't take this to battle. So he's down to 5, and now he has triple Elite Guard Mage. The way is clear for Matias to start working his game plan forward unimpeded.
And he's got that search going here. And, I mean, Teferi Time Raveler is okay at kind of slowing down instance cast through Wilderness Reclamation. But, I mean, Matias just kind of has it all here. He's got that turn 2 search for Azcanta.
Really need a land here for Brad, and he does find one. That's a sigh of relief for him off of this mulligan to 5. He starts off in a hole. Perhaps can dig his way back out by returning search for Azcanta to Matias's hand.
Yeah, but now there's a Tamiyo that Leveratto can play. And by the way, with Tamiyo in play, that Thought Erasure is not going to do anything. That static ability, spells and abilities your opponents control, can't cause you to discard cards or sacrifice permanents. So that Thought Erasure is nearly a dead card now.
Did you see that look from Brad, Paul? He closed his eyes. He's like, I just found the Thought Erasure. I needed you to not have Tamiyo. And Brad knows this game is falling apart for him very quickly. Now he draws Tyrant Scorn. That's not going to do anything. No land drop means no play for the turn here for Nelson.
Yeah, I think game 1 is definitely in favor for Leveratto because the Esper Hero deck has so much removal for the first game.
You meant game one just coming in.
Right, coming into this, I think after sideboard, it actually you can kind of swing it back into Brad Nelson's side with additional copies of Dovin's Veto and Duress. However, in game one, you're playing cards like Hostage Taker and Tyrant Scorn, which simply don't do anything in the matchup.
Brad looks like he's getting his head back in the game, but he's going to need to compose himself, and it might be for game number 2 if Matias is able to keep deploying his game plan as we've seen here, and it does look like that's going to be the case.
And it looks like Matias continuing to go up the chain here with Tamiyo, Collector of Tales.
He's already starting to look for Nexus of Fate. It looks like he did not find one this time, but a good turn for him as he gets to add the search for his Kanta back to the battlefield as well. Now, Wilderness Reclamation in hand for him. He's going to hold on to it for now.
Yeah, and given the 2 activations from Tamiyo, Matias has enough cards in graveyard to flip Search for Azcanta next turn, and we've seen kind of the power of Azcanta the Sunken Ruin in this match against Esper Hero. They just don't have a lot of answers to this card.
And by the way, that was desperation time there for Brad Nelson on end step. He fired off the Thought Erasure just for Surveil 1. He surveilled a Narset into his graveyard and still didn't find a land. Instead, it was Oath of Kaya to knock Tamiyo's loyalty from 7 to 4. This is never where you want to be if you're sitting in Brad's seat.
Yeah, and this game is going to be close to over here. I mean, Leveratto is now going to be able to flip Search for Azcanta, turn that into the powerful card-generating land in Azcanta the Sunken Ruin in conjunction with Wilderness Reclamation that he's going to play this turn. With Tamiyo still in play, he just has so many different ways to get ahead on cards.
Yeah, it looks like game 1 could be over very quickly. Brad also not one to go through the motions. When he sees the writing on the wall, he will concede. He knows these matchups inside and out. The one piece of the puzzle missing currently is Nexus of Fate. But we see the Wilderness Reclamation, Chemister's Insight, even the Callous Dismissal there to get the win condition rolling. So let's start things off with Wilderness Reclamation. Of course, D-Spark a card that I believe Brad has. How many does he actually have? Let's take a quick look here. He has 1 in the board. No, 1 in the board, 2 in the main. So this is a card, of course, that that Matias is going to be aware of, as he wants to make sure that he gets his value out of the Wilderness Reclamation in case Brad does have a copy of D-Spark for on his turn.
And, you know, Matias has that Callous Dismissal, but he doesn't really need to use it right now because he doesn't really have any instants that he really wants to cast outside of that Chemister's Insight. So he might just save that Callous Dismissal for another turn, the turn that he chooses to go off with. And now that he has that Nexus of Fate, I would not be surprised for him to use Callous Dismissal next turn, get that Teferi Time Raveler off the battlefield, and then try to take over the game.
And as I mentioned before, Brad Nelson, when he sees the writing on the wall, he does not stick around for long, and he is going to scoop it up. That is game number 1, going to Matias Leveratto. Again, you know, we're calling him a newcomer. He's really not. Right, by any normal standard, he's been playing Magic for a very long time. You know, he had success as, you know, in 2010, right? I mean, he was a national champ for Argentina. So we're not talking about a player who's new to Magic, but he is absolutely new to this level of play, and he is running through the field. I am super impressed by him. One of the things that was really interesting, too, is watching his demeanor. He looks calm. He's going through the motions. He understands the deck. You know, he knows these interactions. He knows the cards he needs to care about. But when Becca was talking to him earlier, she said, "You look so calm. You look so cool. You know, how do you stay like that?" He said, "I'm not."
Yeah.
That's it. That was his answer. He's like, "I'm nervous. I'm feeling it. It's just he's in battle mode."
He's got a great poker face where he just look at the face and he's just like cool, calm, collected, but inside there's just all this emotion. He's like, okay, don't screw this up. Don't screw this up. And he's just been doing a really great job, you know, playing a deck that he's extremely comfortable playing. A lot to be said there. You know, this deck has been around for quite some time now, and he knows the inside and out. And also just when he knows that he's about to take over the game, you see the pace of play accelerate to the point because he just knows exactly what he needs to do.
All right, now does Brad have a keeper here? And the answer is no. He mulligans the 6 again. But he does keep the 6 and has Hero of Precinct 1 on turn 3.
Yeah, I really wanted an untapped land there to run at Hero of Precinct 1, but I guess, still got to be happy that he's drawn land number 3 here.
There's a negate off the top of the library, though. I gotta say, if I'm in Matias' seat, the third negate, when you're already facing down a hero, super great.
Yeah, if Brad drew a land there, that would have been so strong for Brad. He would have been able to add Elite Guard Mage to the battlefield, can't negate that one, and also have an additional token. So we could have 5 powered that turn, but D-Spark was the draw instead, which...
Yeah. It's funny, this might actually be better.
Absolutely.
because now Brad is forced to leave up D-Spark here, and if Matias decides to go for the Wilderness Reclamation, it will get destroyed before he gets the untap and has negated already, but Matias knows what's up.
Yeah, very, very heads up. He knows that just 2 damage alone is not going to be enough to kind of get him, whittle him down, so playing it very, very patiently here because he's aware of both Dovin's Veto and D-Spark as a card that Brad Nelson could have there. It's like, he's got 3 mana. He didn't play a Planeswalker. What are some of the cards that he could have in hand? And recognizing that and waiting for a better opportunity to cast that Reclamation.
Really interesting decision point now for Nelson. He drew Teferi Time Raveler. Does he want to cast something and leave the shields down? And he does. It's Elite Guard Mage. He feels like he needs to act. He knows this 2 power is not going to get the job done.
Oh, and this is
but
big.
This is huge now for Leveratto.
Now he can play Wilderness Reclamation and then cast Nexus of Fate this turn. He has...
That's massive.
He has, and then he can untap and then slam Biogenic Ooze and keep up Negate to protect it. And the Ooze by itself can take over this game.
Matias Leveratto continues his ascension to the top of this tournament. He may be the first person to knock Brad Nelson off of a match for the duration here.
Oh, and look at this. Yeah, we have Biogenic Ooze here making a token. He might even have mana here to make a token and have double negate up.
Really?
So he adds a green, then he has, yeah. He can actually make an Ooze here, trigger, stack everything properly, and he'll have 3 3/3s on the battlefield with double negate protection.
Wow. Matias says, you want to play the token making game? Okay, I'll do that. You have Hero Precinct 1, I'll take a Biogenic Ooze. Let's see how this goes for you. And Brad Nelson sees the writing on the wall also, because remember, Matias could have made yet another Ooze token, but decided instead to leave the mana available. And Brad, you saw, he actually smiled and shook his head. He's like, this could just not have gone worse for him. This entire match has been a disaster from Brad Nelson's perspective.
And it was so rough that he drew Isolated Chapel. I mean, he doesn't know that there are multiple copies of Negate in Leveratto's hand. He kind of expects one, but you know, he had that Teferi Time Raveler, and he's got Isolated Chapel. If that was an untapped land, he could maybe try to set things up, play Oath of Kaya and D-Spark, or maybe Teferi into D-Spark to get that Ooze off the battlefield. But now, he's only limited to being able to play 1 spell this turn, so he's in a ton of trouble.
Yeah, ironically, Brad would feel a little better if he could see what Leveratto is working with. He would also know that this game's over. Yeah. But the 5 tap lands now for Nelson have left him in a very disadvantageous position. And I mentioned earlier that the 3rd negate off the top of the library didn't look good for Leveratto that early in the game. Now it's beautiful for him.
And look at this combination, Wilderness Reclamation plus Biogenic Ooze. A far more proactive way to just end the game. And he has all the protection in the world here with those 3 copies of Negate.
Now, it looks like he may just want to sit back for this particular attack step and start making some Ooze tokens. So he's going to make one here. Brad Nelson shakes his hand, excuse me, shakes his head. The writing very much on the wall at this point as Matias Leveratto is staged to advance to the finals with 2 blue mana floating plus 6 green, though he has plenty of action here for this negate to protect the Biogenic Ooze. And leave himself with double negate, and that's going to do it.
Wow.
Matias Leveratto advances. What an incredible run for him. He made it look easy, Paul.
That
this
was like
the
6 minutes.
It's incredible. And I got to say, if I'm Brad Nelson, it's like everything's gone well for him. You know, he's fought and scrapped his way through. If you're going to lose, hey, at least make it quick, right? That was not a competitive match.
Leveratto just had the strong draws, and Brad just had awkward starts, you know, mulliganing to 5 game 1. In game 2, just, you know, the classic all check land draw, not enough pressure, and Leveratto just being able to go Wilderness Reclamation into protection. And you know, the one important thing that I want to talk about, even in that last game, I know it wasn't especially close, was him not running out that Wilderness Reclamation on turn 4.
Critical. When
Brad Nelson had 3 mana up, he's like, look, I can be patient. I can continue to take hits from this Hero Precinct 1, because at some point, Brad Nelson has to play another threat to really pressure me. And he found that window. At some point, Brad found land number 4 to play Elite Guard Mage, tapped himself out, and that's when Leveratto took over.
That's right. It was really well played by Leveratto, and it's obvious that he's put the reps in on this deck. Right now, Becca is with Matias.
That's right. Thank you, Marshall. Matias, oh my goodness. You beat the undefeated player who took you down to the lower bracket yesterday. What was that match like?
Oh, it was like crazy. He was kind of unlucky game 1, I think. And game 2, I have a good hand, and I sequenced my spells correctly, and I think I got it.
Yeah, he had to mulligan a couple of times in a few of those games, but you also you had everything you need, and you played it exactly right. You knew when to leave up the negate. Was that tough for you to decide whether or not to keep making tokens, or you just knew you had to keep the negate up?
No, I know, like, I couldn't let you have a window for him to destroy my creature, so I was trying to protect him. I know that time was in my favor, so I was calm.
So this secures your spot in the finals. How exciting is that?
It's amazing. It's unreal, and it's good. Like in this system, like now I have 2 opportunities now, so feeling great.
So who would be the dream person that you would be able to play in the finals?
No, I don't know. Like anything is okay.
All right, well, you must be feeling a lot of pride for Argentina right now. I know we're all excited for it. Stay tuned at home, because next up we have Shahar Shenhar versus Kai Buddha in the lower bracket semifinals, all competing for that trophy in beautiful Las Vegas.
Abby, but down to 2 life. That will do it.
I am Andrea Mengucci, I'm from Italy. I am 25 and I'm a professional Magic player. Since I was a kid,